Welcome back to Market Like a Mother, guys. This is an episode for anyone who has ever felt pulled between delivering what's requested of you and what's actually guiding towards what your client or what your customer actually needs. This is something that I think people in the wellness service-based industry see often. It's something that can be kind of tricky to navigate, and today we're going to talk about kind of that gap between what your clients and customers are asking for and what they actually need. So we kind of feel like we're living in a world right now of those like quick wins, those shortcuts, plug and play tactics, if you will. People want the Instagram posts with the caption template that are automated and posting, on a schedule, the funnel hack, the ad structure, the algorithm tricks. They want the execution before they've ever even stopped to ask, what's the strategy behind this? And does it make sense? And does it make sense for me and my business and what my customers need? And the reality of it is that strategy isn't flashy. It takes time. It requires uncomfortable conversations, and it kind of forces people to zoom out before they zoom in. But without it, the execution is just noise. It's busy work. It's content that looks productive, but doesn't move that needle forward, which is a big thing that we've been talking about this season here. So today, Karen and I are going to be chatting about our personal experiences with that tension that could come from educating your clients while still serving them well. And, hopefully you guys could find some good takeaways in here for you and your business. Hi, Karen.
Hi. Yeah, I think this is such a good topic and something that our customers, our clients see a lot as well. We work in the health space, and I think the quick wins, the fast results are just human nature. Like that's what we're looking for, but the right answers and the long-term answers are usually going to be a little more strategic, a little bit more thought out, and usually take a little bit more time. So if you're a fitness trainer or like a wellness studio or a medical, functionally focused provider, like you understand what we're talking about here.
Yes, absolutely. I think collaboration is like the key word there. So it's not just what you think is right and what the client needs, but it's kind of finding that middle ground between like, fulfilling what they're asking for, but also making sure, like you said, the strategy is there, the execution is there, and it's something that's setting them up for long-term success. I see this like every day in being a founder of, a social media and my online brand. There is constant emails where people are looking to explore partnerships and they just list the deliverables and there's not even a goal. So it's like, hey, can you make this video for, this shampoo? And it's like, but what is the goal to, is it awareness? Is it sales? Is it driving traction to the website? Is it driving traction to social? So like, that's a big one, is just, kind of stepping back and defining goals. Cause that, that's what should be shaping your strategy. And I think people just kind of focus on the deliverables and what are we doing and what's next. It could be hard to kind of steer your clients the right direction there when they're go.
Yeah, it's such a good point. And I know we've talked about this in previous episodes, but setting those goals, understanding what you're trying to accomplish is key to driving the tactics, which come from establishing that strategy. As a team, we recently read This Is Strategy by Seth Godin, and I think that it was a really good read, and it definitely something we recommend. But it's like he says too, it's the piece that everybody skips, right? Because the flashy things, the posting to social, the juices, like whatever it is what draws people in. But I do have to say, Lauren, I love your note on collaboration, because I was thinking about this morning when we were talking about this topic. As a young entrepreneur starting my agency with not a ton of experience, I think I had a harder time collaborating with clients because I would see feedback as criticism. So that's something that I definitely was, adjusted over the years and started to better understand, when my client is giving feedback on something or they're pushing, for a specific thing or idea on their end, there's always like validity to that, right? So being able to understand the why behind their request can help me better adjust my response to what they're looking for, and making sure that they understand I'm aligned with those outcomes and that final result we're trying to achieve, which will help them see, be more open to my recommendations too. Because if they just think I'm trying to push my objectives, or I'm trying to make money or whatever it is, then of course there's going to be some resistance there. But if you're like aligned, like I'm sure in the example you shared too, where you're saying, hey, like I want to make sure I'm delivering you something that's going to work for you in the way you want it to work. Like, let's have this conversation first. I think that collaboration piece, like you said, is so important.
And a good point too is like not taking offense to it. Because I think that's where there could be some like confusion too. Because of course, like you know, are the expert of your field. You're the subject matter expert, and it can almost feel sometimes like it's you know, you're being doubted, or you know, maybe you're not being taken seriously in what you're an expert, you know, on that subject. That's something that I struggle with. So I'm glad you talked about that, because I will get an email back of like, hey, can you, you know, replace a couple frames in this video? And I'm like, so you hate me. So you think I'm horrible. You know what I mean? Being able to separate that is super important. And it's, you know, it's something that sounds so silly and mundane, but it is kind of a mindset shift to, you know, remember to hold yourself, you know, you're an expert, you know what you're doing, and to kind of not let yourself get self-doubt when you're getting that pushback from your client or your customers, for sure.
Yeah, because you're an expert at what you do, and hopefully they're an expert at what they do, right? So they have a behind the scenes
Yes.
like history and knowledge and library of like resources within their own minds too that will support what you're offering. And so being able to have that back and forth and collaborate and bring both of those different perspectives to the table is where you can see the most transformational results and the best outcomes. I'm curious, Lauren, if you have you ever been asked for something that you know you had initial hesitations around, or there was like maybe a lacking goal or whatever it might be, but like you push back, the client said, nope, this is what I want. You delivered it, and you knew like that it wouldn't work like they wanted it to, or that you would want your own content to work.
Yes. This actually happened to me so recently. I won't name any names, but I was asked to do an ad, and usually I prefer to write my own script. I like to, you know, put my own spin on it, make it personal to me, because I know what performs well with my audience. And they were like, nope, you are going to read our assigned script and read it word for word exactly as it is. And I was like, this is not going to go over well. This sounds like an advertisement. It sounds cheesy. And you know, that video did not perform well. But you know, at the end of the day, it's like, even though I gave my feedback, I kind of, you know, had this tense moment with the client. I continued kind of on their wishes, and I almost wish I had pushed back a little harder. Especially seeing that kind of it went exactly as I thought it would. You know, the results weren't there. They
Hmm.
didn't really hit the goal that they were hoping to. So I think that, you know, that's definitely like a tough moment. You know, when you're working with clients at Radiant Care, and is there anything that you have in the workflow that kind of like forces that intentional like strategy to happen before the execution, and kind of like forces, I guess, that, you know, that moment to educate the client and to really focus on the strategy first?
Yeah, there's some things we've put in place that definitely help that. And I just want to speak to your thought of providing that feedback, and especially if you're a newer business owner starting out, or you know it's a newer service that you're offering or something like that. There can definitely be self doubt or you know internal kind of imposter syndrome. And so I think if you know I believe in gut instincts too. So like if you're feeling like there's some friction or some misalignment, I what I've learned over the years is definitely speak up. Like you know what you're talking about, you know what you're doing, and even if you're not 100% right, you will feel much better in the long run if you share, like stand your ground and share what you see and feel and have experienced in the past with other clients. And then if they choose to still move forward in the direction that they're pushing for, that's fine. Of course, you'll support them in that, but you can point back to that conversation then too if it comes back around and you're like, hey, this didn't perform like we wanted it to. It's like, okay, let's come back to that conversation we had earlier where I was saying, hey, this isn't going
Right.
to perform like you want it to because of these reasons.
Right.
And maybe
Pull up
we
the receipts. Always keep the receipts.
yeah, yeah. Um, so I think that one of the things you know, we've done is we do have like a standalone discovery process. So in that process, we do a lot of the initial research with our clients to and their clients to understand, you know, and validate some of the assumptions, kind of build out our proposal or recommendations for different, you know, campaigns or project work or retainer items. And so that whole process is very enlightening. And I think there has never been a case where we don't uncover something that the client wasn't aware of, or, you know, maybe they thought something differently about how their customers perceive things. And so that initial discovery work has been really instrumental in helping us reinforce the strategy piece and like taking the time to set the foundation for the work that we're doing together from an implementation or tactical standpoint.
I feel like those discovery calls too are like the perfect place to identify like those fixed ideas that the client might have, and kind of almost have that open dialogue to educate, before we're even discussing, deliverables or strategy or execution. You know what I mean? Is kind of identifying where might this client kind of be stuck in these fixed ideas right off the bat, and almost like nipping them in the bud before they become a problem down the road too, when you're building that strategy. I think it's a good way to kind of identify that first.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that actually reminds me of something you said earlier too, where it's like, yeah, I pushed back and they're like, nope, you do what I say. And I think there's an element of mutual respect to this, right? Like you want to work with clients that respect your opinion, your professional, your professional expertise and like what you're bringing to the table as well. And so there might be clients that come to you with those fixed ideas, like you said, and you have an opportunity to educate them, to collaborate and kind of show them some alternatives. Because I think, a lot of times, like we talked about in our previous episode, as a business owner, we're expected to know everything, right? We're making all the decisions, we're doing all the things, we're wearing all the hats. And so we can feel a little threatened sometimes when someone might come in and tell us like something different than what we're thinking it should be. So I think identifying those fixed ideas, having the mutual respect in terms of listening to one another and those perspectives to come to, a more strategic conclusion around what needs to be done.
The respect is a big thing too, which is actually why we named our framework today "Holding Strategic Ground with a Smile." Because, like you said, you always want, that mutual respect. You want to be able to, tell your ideas and kind of give pushback while obviously still always being respectful. So we're going to give you some framework to help you do that, because we know it's not always easy, and confrontation and having those tense moments could be tough. So the first one is, like we talked about, educate before executing. I have like the perfect example. This happened to me just this past week. I had a brand who was, absolutely steadfast that they wanted 10 hashtags on the ad and post that I was posting, which is not even allowed. The platform, both Instagram and TikTok now will not let you add more than 5 hashtags. And, I had to, with a smile, really push back and be like, this isn't even correct. This is something that's not even possible. I can't be penalized for this because this isn't even something that's allowed. So again, kind of being able to nip those things in the bud early is really important. And I think a big part of the respect aspect comes with explaining the why. So it's not just like, I'm right, and this is the way it's going to be. I'm the expert. It's explaining the why. I think that's important. To make sure that you're building that rapport, like you said, Karen, and kind of positioning yourself as this subject matter expert, but not having resistance with the client, or those tense moments could be really, really important. And I know you probably do a lot of this within those discovery calls, even, right off the bat, trying to explain, kind of what we're doing and why we're able to help and why we're the subject matter experts.
Yeah. And I think the longer you've been in business, the more examples you can pull on in conversations to share with people that are like the why, like you're saying. I completely agree with that. And I think that's a really important part. So, and young Karen might have been like, because I said so. But old Karen is like, well, because the research shows, because our experience has like led us to this. So I think that why is really, really important. So I love that. So next up is systems that reinforce strategy. Oh my gosh, we cannot get away from this systems conversation, can we? Structuring offers.
It's important.
Around strategic discovery, setting expectations early in the client journey on that initial kind of onboarding or alignment call, or, discovery call, or whatever, your enrollment call, whatever you're calling that initial conversation is a great place to say, hey, this is going to take some work, and here's, what you can expect over that period of time. And then integrating some of those checkpoints into the workflows. So knowing what you're looking for, again, having that goal is key to understanding, are we making progress towards that? Are we where we expected to be? Or maybe do we need to make some shifts, because everything is not perfect right out the gate. Usually you're iterating and optimizing as you move forward, whether that's healthcare or fitness or marketing. And so paying attention to that throughout is really important. And then last up, we have building strategy into offers without compromising standards. So designing those boundaries into services, protecting time for thinking, not just doing. Oh my gosh, this has got to be the biggest challenge for me sometimes. And then helping clients seeing long-term value. What of those 3 has been a struggle for you, Lauren?
I think the helping clients see the long-term value. I think there has been times where, people or brands want to jump right into a partnership, and you kind of have to explain that you need to slowly introduce your audience to it over time. And for them, they want it instantly, and they don't see the long-term value. So that's something that I've definitely had to, I guess, go back to the educate before executing. And now I kind of even build that into my services. So, I don't just pull these random brand deals out of the blue and pop these products on my audience. I like to kind of warm them up to it and integrate it into my content over time. And that's something that I've actually built into my services when a brand approaches me to work together. So I think that's really important, is it kind of alleviates some of that tension when it's built in and kind of clearly defined in your execution right off the bat. Karen, is there anything at Radiant
Definitely.
like this that you have where you've kind of designed those boundaries woven into Radiant services or our retainers for our clients?
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about the discovery piece before. Like we build in some level of that depending on the level of engagement. There's always some part up front that's doing that initial discovery. So whether that's having conversations with their stakeholders, having conversations with their end users or customers, clients, patients, something that's going to reinforce some of the suggested direction that they want to go, some of the ideas that they have. And that's been really critical because, like I said, that uncovers a lot of information that they didn't necessarily have before, because we're still finding that most businesses don't regularly talk to their customers. And so we're building plans on assumptions. And a lot of times the assumptions are like close to correct, if not correct. But like, let's just make sure that we're really understanding like what our customers are looking for and align to those expectations, and create campaigns and communication that resonates with them and really drives the results we want.
For sure. And I think too, some of these reflection questions are going to help people identify that who are listening. So we always kind of like to leave you guys with something to reflect on and kind of some prompts to audit your business yourself this week. So some things to think about. Have you defined your business's growth strategy? And is there anywhere that you feel like you're executing without that strategic clarity right now? Super important to make sure that you always have that clarity through, every step of the way. And then where could you better ask questions to understand fixed ideas, for your clients and customers? Are there education opportunities that you're missing that, could help alleviate tension or resistance down the road? And can you leverage those results or examples to show your client that you understand, that you're the subject matter? I know, Karen, you mentioned this, that kind of the longer you're in your business, the more personal experiences you'll be able to pull into these conversations and say, I've been here and I've seen XYZ. And I think, being a founder, it might not always be possible at the beginning, but, eventually you will get to that point where you could kind of pull these examples in to show your clients that you really know where they're trying to get.
Yeah. And I think we talked about AI in the last conversation, and probably every conversation we ever have in life now. But that's another place to lean, right? When you're trying to identify and pull up like research and stats and data, is AI can be a great tool to help scour the internet for resources and references to cite when you're building out your plans and making recommendations to clients.
Absolutely. And before we go today, we just have some little places that you could find us to. If you want to talk more about any of these things, we'd love to hear from you, especially if there's something that, resonated with you in this specific episode. If you have some answers to these reflection questions, we're always open to hear it. We'd love to get into that collaborative conversation. Check out our website to learn more about Radiant and how we help brands grow with intention. And we are on social media pretty much everywhere. We're on LinkedIn, we're on TikTok, we're on Instagram, and we are on Facebook. You could stream today's episode on Apple or Spotify, or watch our lovely faces on the video version on YouTube. And thank you guys just again for hanging out with us today. And until next time, stay
Stay
radiant.
radiant.